Welcome to Hired Up, the podcast for next-level executives and board nominees. We strive for that win-win for all, from navigating the hidden job market to finding confidence to go for what you want at any age, or simply to go out and get yourself hired up. And we especially love helping successful executives make exciting career moves that let them be leading heroes at home, not just at the office. So if any of these challenges are ahead for you, visit us at westgatecareercoaching.com.
This recording is called From Executive to Entrepreneur, and I am Maureen Farmer, CEO of Westgate Executive Branding, and our website is westgatecareercoaching.com, and this recording is my interview with a former corporate executive who has recently transitioned from corporate to launch a couple of businesses, including a restaurant, and he is also CFO for hire, along with some other businesses that I'll let him talk about. So, Andrew, welcome.
Thank you, Maureen. It's great to be here.
Thank you for joining me. So, Andrew, we've known each other for a few years now, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your career and your profession.
Sure. I am a CPA, chartered public accountant by background. I've been practicing for a few years, as many do, and then they shift into other places outside of public practice. I ended up working for provincial government for a few years, and then in a sort of a finance and management capacity. And then after that, I found a home with a large retailer in Canada, and had a great career there for about 20 years. And leveraging sort of my CPA background, I started off in finance and worked my way into a sort of a regional VP finance role, and then ended up getting promoted into the overall running of the region for a few years. Then I tried my hand at national sourcing and procurement for a few years, and I finished it off with a stint in running the national program for small retailers across the country. So it was a wonderful ride through that, and had lots of great experience. So after that ended about a year and a half ago, I connected with a couple of folks I felt kinship with, and we've invested in a restaurant business, and I'm also going to be investing in a commercial real estate business where I'm doing sort of the CFO finance work. So lots of spins, and so in a couple of minutes, that's the nutshell of what I've been doing.
That's fantastic, and I just want to be clear as well, is that you refer to this small retailer across Canada. That was not a small job. Just to give some context, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that last stint, because it was not a small operation. You had quite a bit of, you had a lot going on there.
For about the last 5 years of my career within this large retailer, I was running their national franchise program, and there's a few different types of businesses. I was running the one that focuses on smaller retailers. In and of itself, it would be quite a large business in the range of $500 million a year in sales. So it's certainly, I had responsibility for everything, essentially, sales, operations, merchandising, connectivity with supply chain, business development, franchise liaison, the whole gamut. So it was a great experience, and working with those folks who are really entrepreneurs, because they're a little more, they're somewhat on their own, is an eye opener as well. So it was a great experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fantastic. So Andrew, given that you have this breadth of experience in multiple sectors, private, public, publicly traded, what would you say surprised you most in your career so far?
Well, from a corporate perspective, I realized, even backing up further from the point of view of government, everybody's different. I think part of this was finding out what worked for me as a person, and I realized I wasn't aligned with some of the internal workings of a provincial government entity. Just sometimes didn't jive with me as a taxpayer. So I found something in the retail sector that was much more akin to what I sort of believed in. what sort of surprised me, I guess, I don't know if it's surprised or what I just sort of experienced that in hindsight is cool or different, is just watching the evolution of this large corporate entity coming from a place where it was a regional business, like it was a national footprint, but certainly regional leadership. And over the course of 20 years, watching it morph from a business that had significant, for example, executive presence in the regions, to, by the time I was leaving, had very little executive presence. And so watching that unfold and watching the impact on the customer and also just, experiencing the corporate restructures that happened every year or two or whatever, it just sort of makes you realize, what it takes to be successful in a large business, because the law of large numbers says you have to keep generating return, and so there's always that desire to reduce cost and do things better, cheaper. So that was certainly was sort of one surprise. The other one that I guess I just didn't have an appreciation for is, in a large business, once you get in and once you establish yourself and establish your credibility, there's a lot of potential for movement, and I really didn't know that when I get in, because as I relayed there earlier, I mean, I went through multiple careers almost inside one company, but it was all really based on the fact that I think I'd established myself. I had good relationships with many people. People trusted me, and so I just didn't appreciate that I could have a couple of different careers inside one when I started.
Right. So you bring up a really important point, and that's one of visibility and career management inside a large organization. So I guess, I think a lot of people will often look at their career and look at their current role and think, I think maybe it's better elsewhere, or I could do better elsewhere, or I could do something different elsewhere, without really thinking about the possibilities inside an organization. So how would you advise someone listening today to raise your visibility inside a large organization so that you can recreate your own position inside that organization?
Well, I'm going to answer it, a little bit differently in the sense of, I wish I knew then what I know now, because I didn't.
Don't we all?
I think I had. I was lucky enough to get promoted into a number of different roles, and I think, as I demonstrated skill and I had good relationships, as I mentioned, things like that. But it was always on the terms of the business. In other words, the business had this opportunity and they selected me. It wasn't part of my having a bigger plan. And in hindsight, I wouldn't do that. But so I'd love to talk about that maybe a little bit more down the road. But specifically to your question on managing your career, I mean, in my experience, again, there's all kinds of opportunity. But if you are not actively managing your brand, and again, I wouldn't have used this term maybe 5 years ago, but I certainly embrace it now. If you're not, really, having some visibility and not just doing good work, but being seen as doing good work and trying to get out there a little bit more, you are, you run the risk of being passed over for, promotions or opportunities, not because you're not capable, but just because people just don't know you as well as they maybe know some other people.
There's that whole kind of magic of the how. So we know lots of great people who are capable. Sometimes they are overlooked for opportunities. So what did you do that was different from somebody else who may have, applied for jobs or been overlooked rather for an opportunity? Like, what was it that you did?
Yeah. The most important thing in hindsight was really just making sure I had a lot of good relationships. And they ended up being a lot of senior people. I wasn't, I'm not the biggest networker out there, and I wasn't, trying to join all the corporate, committees and things like that. And I could have, but I tried to do a good job. And I also just ended up becoming, close to a number of people who were senior over time. I think it's just because, as you know, you work enough with people and you develop a relationship and then you get to know them. And because those people were in a position of authority and they trusted me, so it was, was I actively sort of cultivating those relationships because I was hoping it would help my career down the road? I mean, to be honest, I probably wasn't. It was more organic. But in hindsight, that is the key. So I was doing it out of a genuine base, but the reality is, had I not done that, my career wouldn't have lasted as long as it did there. So cultivating those relationships and just knowing who decision makers are, because that can change in a large organization quickly, and so being broadly networked, in my opinion, in a genuine way is very helpful.
Of course, absolutely. So, given that hindsight, what might you do a little bit differently if you could go back?
So, what in my career, for example, what happened is I still had really good connections with some key people, but some of my contacts had moved on to other roles, had moved into organizations, and this is where, as I mentioned, the business had evolved from the standpoint of moving from a regional business to national, and I wasn't physically present in the office, in the head office, quite as much because I didn't live in the same province, and so that didn't help me in terms of those relationships. But what I should have done was just more actively cultivated relationships with people who were the key decision makers of the time to establish myself. I really, in hindsight, should have done maybe a little bit more to create some visibility with myself around some of these. There's committee work you can do in a large company. There's nonprofit committee work you can do, and I didn't really get involved with that stuff, and I think that was I just didn't have enough profile probably in the end to when there's always that changing of the guard, and
that's helpful. And I think we all have that experience. If we knew then what we know now, we would thought that we would change.
Yeah, so, exactly.
So you had a fantastic career with this organization, and you had a wonderful career overall so far. And so I would love to talk a little bit about what you're doing now, because I'm really, really fascinated by the transition you've made. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you're doing now?
Sure. I'm involved with two other partners in a restaurant, and so that happened about a little over a year ago now, and I'm likely to invest in a real estate company doing, again, I'm the acting CFO for that company, likely to take an equity position in that. So on the restaurant side, I mean, basically, from an entrepreneur standpoint, I am the managing partner. I'm the only one physically present of the three partners in the province. So I play a very active role in the management of the business. I have a manager in the restaurant, but I'm fairly active, and I mean, a little bit of the backdrop is part of the reason I think that I was identified to maybe, partner up with these great people is there was no local leadership in this location. And so what I was able to provide just coming in was, a bit of obviously a strong background in retail, a focus on the customer, and also just enough knowledge about how to make things happen, and that local leadership that was really lacking and really needed to be there to help move things along. So I'm actively doing that, and then on the real estate side, I'm just doing CFO type work for a real estate company, and sort of with COVID-19, that's been entertaining, but it's been a lot of fun as well. So it's been fun so far. I'm really enjoying it. It's got some trying days, but I'm really enjoying it.
So given this transition, you've been out of corporate for a little while now, about a year or so, or maybe a little bit longer. What has surprised you most about entrepreneurship? Because I know that individuals listening to this recording will be very interested in that sort of the magic lure of being your own boss, of entrepreneurship, of the perceived freedom of the lifestyle, and of that journey itself. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. A couple things that I learned or surprised me is it is humbling. And so coming from an executive position into this, where you're fortunate enough often to have a team around you that will do work for you, et cetera, and then you get into this environment and that team is not there. I do everything from, one minute I'm talking to the lawyers about a deal we're working on or some whatever thing we have to kind of manage. And then, later on I'll be washing dishes. So it's literally the spectrum of activity for the business. And the reality is, what you realize, and typically in a small business, there's not a lot of support around you. And you really have to kind of dig down, suck it up in terms of your humility and just go make things happen. So that was certainly, I knew I was in for that, but I certainly, it's one thing to intellectually understand that, and then it's another thing to be in the middle of it when you're literally washing dishes. So that was an eye-opener. Something else was, and this is, I think, a confidence boost for anybody who might be thinking about this is, I was nervous coming in about what am I bringing to the table? You got all this sort of background from a larger organization coming into something that's smaller and more your own. But what was really, I've leaned back on a few times is just, there's so many things that as my career I had learned. And you sort of just forget all this stuff in a certain way, and then all of a sudden you're pulling stuff out of your toolkit. It's like, well, this is what we need to do, and the people around you are sort of like, oh wow, I never would have thought of that, and you're thinking, oh my God, I did this 10 times, right? And you just so there's a certain underlying, you have to believe in yourself, and you sort of just have to trust the fact that you've learned enough. And at the end of the day, a business is a business, and you have sales, and you have people, and customers, and so there's so many fundamentals. And so somebody thinking about the switch, that part, there's lots you're going to bring that will really help you in that transition. If you're thinking about doing it, number one, absolutely do your homework and know what you're getting in. And when I say do your homework, what I didn't do that I wish I had done was whatever that experience is you're thinking about investing in or doing, find a way to go do it before you invest. Like if in hindsight, I wish I had gone and worked in the restaurant for a week, because my opinion on what I was getting into would have been so different. And so do that homework and really understand, right? Because you'll really open your eyes. And the other thing is sort of just the importance of partners. If you're investing and you're investing in partners, one guy I did a whole bunch of research on my own. One of the things I met with, one guy said the first ship to sink are partnerships. Yes. So, you just, if you're getting, into a relationship and an investment with some partners, my strong advice is just make sure you know who these people are, understand them on a personal level, really like go to dinner if you don't know, whatever, do whatever it takes to make sure because once you're in, you're in.
So the due diligence process on the partnership side, as well as the due diligence on the market itself, or the business, the industry, or the type of business that you are thinking of investing in. So Andrew, would your decision to invest in this restaurant have changed had you gone and worked there for a week beforehand?
It might have. It might have. It's so hands-on that, and I think as in just to step back for a second, I knew it was going to be a couple of years of heavy lifting to kind of get this where it's going to be, and certainly we've made great progress. So there's not complaints, but it is not like it's a lot of work. And I knew it was going to be work. I don't think I appreciated it was going to be quite this demanding. But I wouldn't change, and it's opened some other doors for me that's really neat, and I've learned a ton, and I just didn't want to have any regrets, right? Sure. I wanted to try this, and so it's all good.
Right, and you did a lot of soul searching and introspection before you signed on with these partners as well, and that probably is a good predictor of a good outcome, doing the due diligence and really thinking about, what's important to you, what are your values, what are your goals, and ensuring that the goals of the partners are aligned with your own, regardless of the business, because as you said, business is business.
100%.
And you said something a couple of minutes ago I'd love to kind of ask about, and you just mentioned about opening doors. So can you talk a little bit about what doors that have opened for you there as a result of this business?
Sure. Yeah. So as part of the restaurant side, we built another sort of mini restaurant sort of attached to it. And that whole project, was last summer in essence. And so, but part of the reason why I really wanted to do this was because it was a chance for me to connect with the community, right? And I'd spent, almost 15 years on a plane, and all my network was sort of, a bit was here locally, and the other piece was in the other province where I spent a bunch of time. And so this was a chance for me to get back and do that. And so through just as an example, through the construction process of this, you're working with the city, you're working with, the project managers, you get to know the plumbers, you end up dealing with surveyors. And so there's just, in that one little example, I got to know all these people, and so and then something comes up and you find yourself calling them, and then you just end up developing in this network, and it opens so many doors in the local community that when you need something, it's just opened so many doors for me in terms of people to call now, and so that's been really sort of neat to see how that's evolved, right? So yeah.
In this construction of this new business, so you've done two things in a very short period of time. You've purchased an existing business, and then you've built a brand new business. So
yes.
that is a tremendous learning experience for you.
Yeah. It was last summer was in the blink of an eye, and it was. I mean, one of the most challenging times in terms of the time commitment, and just, again, this is where you're an entrepreneur at your finest, like you're trying to find a way to sweet talk the city, because you're saying, I can't, if you give me my permit to open in September, that's too late. So you're just doing all these things that are it's very exciting. And I was lucky enough to have, I should mention, my wife is a tremendous ally in this whole process, and I couldn't have done it without her. So, that's another thing as an entrepreneur, when you're getting in, I mean, you're dealing with so much stuff. If your partner is not supportive of that, it just, because it's very difficult to just leave everything at the office, because there literally is no office, right? It's either so I guess got call out for her, because she's stood by me and been my rock in many ways. So
and a CPA on top of that. So that's a pretty sweet deal as well.
Doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt.
Doesn't hurt. This is wonderful. So one final thing I'd love to talk about very briefly is about your volunteerism with a board of directors. You started a few years ago with a local board, and now you are on a national board. And I'm pivoting a little bit here because I think that anyone listening to this recording, if he or she is looking at career development and growth, and to do this authentically, as you say, this is an authentic process, but taking the time and opportunity to lend your skills and knowledge and sometimes influence to a nonprofit organization can also raise your visibility. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Actually, Maureen and I, we worked together there for probably whatever that was, 5-6 years ago, and I needed some counseling, because I recognized sort of this gap in terms of my not having a local presence. And so after doing some thinking about that, I really want to just reestablish myself locally, and so a charity was a great way to do that. And so I picked one that was sort of important to me, and I felt that was really important, again, to be genuine and not just do it for the contacts, but be able to pour into something that is more than that. And so anyways, I picked the charity, and one thing sort of led to another, and I mean, I've been the board chair for the last 3 years. I'm rolling off in June. That's the provincial board, and then last fall, I joined the national board, and I'm taking on some other governance work there for them. But it's been a great way. I mean, locally, everybody in that board knows about my business, and I don't go around selling it, but it's, if you do good work there, and I feel like I've done pretty good work, you get to talk to people and they want to know a little bit about your story. And then, it's just a great way to sort of connect in with the community. And, I've leveraged that in terms of, even just asking for some advice from time to time from some of the people on the board that you respect and trust. And it's been a really good experience. And it's, I think, as I get credit for that for other people, and certainly my family appreciates that commitment that I'm making on behalf of this charity that, like I said, is important to our whole family. So it's nice.
Yeah, that personal connection is important, just in terms of meaningfulness and being authentic and so forth. I completely get that.
Yeah.
So Andrew, I'd love to just wind down here and say, first of all, thank you so much for participating in the call. And if you had one or two pieces of advice to other people maybe who are in a corporate role right now, who are looking at stepping up in the organization or maybe stepping out, what kind of career management advice would you give to that person?
Be bold. So you're gonna have to be proactively managing your career and be thoughtful about that. So that means having a profile, and that means doing some of those things. And again, highly suggested that you do it in a way that feels genuine, because many people I know don't love networking with air quotes. But if you find a way to do something that is genuine, it really feels very different. Work on that profile. And then the other thing is just really make sure you understand within the organization who the decision makers are, and make sure if you visualize that sort of executive table and that group that sits around that table, if you can't pick one or two of those people that are at that table that would vouch for you when the chips are down, that's a problem. And so work on those relationships and make sure you got a couple people. And I didn't mention this before, but just one thing is, having a mentor inside the organization, right? Just somebody you can trust, who's been around, who's hopefully more senior, who can give you some guidance. I mean, critical. And people typically, as long as they like you and have respect for you, would be happy to help. So, so those relationships are really important as well.
Okay. So anything else that you have to say before we sign off, Andrew?
No, other than, you should spend some time working with Maureen. She was great for me. We had a great experience, I must say, and she really opened my eyes and challenged me. So that was awesome. And that's why I'm sort of happy to do this and share, the fact that it was great working with you. So happy to do this.
That's wonderful. And so for anyone interested in having a look at our website, it's westgatecareercoaching.com. And I just want to say again, Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time today. You've been a huge supporter of my organization, and I'm looking forward to learning what's next in your business.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you, and best of luck to you as well.
Thank you, Andrew. Take care.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Hired Up with Maureen Farmer. If you enjoyed the show today, please tell a friend and write a review for us. For customized resources to help you get hired up to your next C-level position, visit westgatecareercoaching.com. Do you struggle to find words for emails, phone calls, and job applications for your C-level job search? Get our CEO Script Vault, job search scripts for busy executives to help you get hired up. Kindle edition available on Amazon.com. We'd love to welcome you into the Westgate family of success stories.